Hey guys, our topic this week is a request from Ninjammer726. We're going to be going over the story of the Xenogears game. As a quick note, this game spans snapshots of time spanning about 10,000 years, though most of it takes place in the game's current modern day, so we're just going to be covering the important plot points so as to maintain a manageable video length. Sort of.
Alright, first things first, if the title Xenogears sounds vaguely familiar, but this game cover does not look familiar, it's probably because you, like us, are more familiar with later game series like Xenosaga and Xenoblade Chronicles. All of these games were designed by the same core series of writers and creative directors, and all share similar themes, but Xenogears was the first. While there is not officially, so far as we can discern, any technical canonical tie between these three franchises, there are numerous nods to the previous series in each successive game. And they tend to create a similar, theoretically possible, interconnected universe and story. But today we're going over the original Xenogears. As previously mentioned, this game's plot takes place over the course of 10,000 years. That is a long time, people. Just so you know. So we're going to start at the beginning, touch on a few small key points during the middle few thousand years before focusing on the quote-unquote modern day and the story's end, which is where most of the actual gameplay takes place. The game centers around a few key characters. For our purposes, the most important of these characters are the Contact, the Antitype, the Complement, more often referred to simply as the Maya, the Wave Existence, and finally, Krelian. With all of that out and said, let's dive into the story.
Alright, so about 10,000 years before the game begins, a sci-fi level humanity capable of interstellar travel completed the Yahweh interplanetary invasion system, a weapon designed to be able to act autonomously and manage war against entire solar systems at a time. A key component of this system was the Deus system. However, upon its completion, the Deus was put through a test run and the unexpected happened. Deus ran wildly out of control and annihilated an entire planet, then cost thousands of lives in the process of trying to get it shut down. Once it was subdued, the Deus was disassembled into its component cores and packed onto the Eldridge, an enormous ship, to be sent off and studied so they could figure out what went wrong with it. Unbeknownst to anyone, what had actually happened was that the Zohar modifier, an ancient and ludicrously powerful object used as Deus's main engine, had, upon activation, run the calculations and determined that it needed even more power to fulfill the Deus's purpose. So, in an attempt to satisfy its energy needs, it had ripped open a breach into a higher plane of existence, where all things existed in a state of pure energy waves, and managed to sync with and subsequently pull the Wave Existence into our reality. The Wave Existence, a conscious being of nigh unlimited power, was nevertheless hampered by the comparatively narrow laws of physics inherent to our universe, and was forced to take a physical form in order to continue its existence, which became a central biological component of the Zohar modifier and Deus, leaving the Wave Existence trapped within the Zohar modifier, and turning the Zohar modifier into a perpetual motion machine, an engine capable of producing endless energy. The Wave Existence, and by extension the Zohar modifier, is the power source for all gears, the giant mechs in the game, as well as the source of ether, the magic system for the game. This syncing of the Zohar modifier and the Wave Existence had led to the malfunction in Deus' systems that led to it being dismantled.
Keeping in mind that no one was yet aware of this, while on board the Eldridge, a young boy named Abel stumbled into the Deus' core and, as children are wont to do, touched things. Specifically, he touched the Zohar modifier, and at his touch the Wave Existence sensed a chance to free itself, and, either reflexively or purposefully, was split into three distinct segments at Abel's touch. In order to communicate with Abel, the Wave Existence created a human being named Elehiam, hereafter referred to as Eli, who was infused with the Wave Existence's will. Abel was in essence granted access to the Wave Existence's power, and the Wave Existence's limiting physical body remained within the Zohar modifier. It was explained to Abel that for the Wave Existence to be freed, Abel needed to destroy the Zohar modifier. Because of the empowering effects of the Wave Existence, the Zohar modifier was effectively indestructible for anyone other than Abel, as he'd been granted access to the full power of the Wave Existence. However, while this was going on, and before anything could be done, Deus, despite being divided into its various components, had begun to hack the Eldritch and gain control of its systems, attempting to hijack the ship for its own purposes. In response, in a valiant act of selflessness to try and protect the rest of society, the Eldritch's command crew initiated a self-destruct, attempting to destroy the Deus rather than let it return to humanity's system and wreak untold havoc. Unfortunately, in the short term, their sacrifice was in vain, as the Deus and Zohar modifier crashed onto a nearby planet. Of all of the roughly 1.2 million souls on board the Eldritch, only Abel survives, preserved by the power of the wave existence. Though technically Ellie survives as well, as the Deus, heavily damaged as it was, activated a regeneration program which co-opted her body, transforming her into the original Maya. Following her programmed instructions, Maya created a biological assembler and created the first of their new planet's humans in the form of the Gazel Ministry and Cain, who would survive in one form or another for most of the rest of the 10,000 years or so. She also created two duplicates of herself, a Maya and an Ellie, before returning to one of the Deus' main operating systems to continue acting as a biocomputer.
Flash forward a few years from the Eldritch's crash, Abel has grown to adulthood, and so has the new Ellie. In the ensuing years, Maya, Cain, and the Gazel Ministry had begun laying the foundations for the various societal and scientific constructs that would allow them to control the rest of humanity that had been created using both the assembler and more conventional means of procreation. The reason being was that their collective purpose, as programmed by the Deus, was to cultivate humanity to the point where they would be useful as biological building materials in order to repair and reform Deus itself. Yes, you heard that right. After crashing and nearly being destroyed, the Deus machine reconstructed the human race from scratch in order to plant the seed for its own regeneration. Seeing where this was going, Abel and Ellie objected, openly standing out against Cain, who by this point had been made emperor, and tried to rally the people. Ultimately, they would fail, with both Abel and Ellie dying for the first time. It's at this point that those names we mentioned earlier become important. Abel was the first life of the previously mentioned Contact, and the first antitype was Ellie. Because the wave existence wanted so badly to be freed, it ensured that the Contact, the being capable of channeling the wave essence's own power, and the Antitype, the possessor of its will, would periodically be reborn into humanity so that they might try again. But each time, they were born anew, with no memory of their previous lives or the nature and existence of the wave existence itself. In order to fulfill the purpose of their rebirth, they would have to first awaken and remember what they were meant to do. In contrast, the complement, or simply the Maya, is continuously reborn thanks to programming from the Deus, with the singular purpose of ensuring that humanity is properly shepherded into becoming the perfect fuel from which to rebuild Deus. While the Contact and the Antitype are reborn as full people, as they are formed around the same core individual souls, via the wave existence's power, Maya is a product of science. From day one, all women initially created by the biological assembler, and every woman naturally born thereafter, were designed with a specific genetic imprint. This factor of their DNA means that whenever an incarnation of Maya dies, she is reborn in another woman somewhere on the planet. When this happens, the random woman's biology shifts to physically take on the appearance of Maya, and she is reborn with all of her previous memories and experiences. At first, this seems much more advantageous than the wave existence's rebirth, but this too has a catch. Where the Contact and the Antitype are people with free will, the Maya is essentially just a biological android. She can perform actions only within the confines of programming, a fact that she herself mentions in-game on more than one occasion. Her rebirth is far more efficient, but unlike with the wave existence, a truly new life is never created. The Maya template is merely superimposed over the pre-existing woman's consciousness and identity.
Over the next 10,000 years! The Contact, Antitype, and the Maya would be reborn several times. In-game, we only see the Contact and Antitype reborn 3 times, but we presume that these were their most important incarnations, as we specifically know that Maya, by the modern-day period, has been reborn literally hundreds of times. The first time the 3 of them were seen again is something in the neighborhood of 6,000 years later, about 4,000 years before the game takes place. By this time, humanity had reached great technological heights, but was also suffering from extreme genetic degradation, leading to widespread sterility and a shortened lifespan in most of the population. Maya, following her directive to create healthy, genetically useful building blocks for the Deus, began plans to destroy most of the population on the planet by inciting nuclear war, leaving only, or at least predominantly, the healthy members of humanity to rebuild and transfer their superior DNA to the following generations. However, the Contact and Antitype were reborn as scientists in this era, and were researching nanotech applications in the hopes of being able to cure mankind's sterility. Maya sponsored their research, and they worked together for a time, before the Contact became wise to Maya's plans and severed ties. When the Antitype died and the lab was lost in Maya's attempt to acquire their research in the aftermath of their separation, Maya continued her original plan and ensured the planet nuked itself to pieces, reducing humanity's population by around 90%.
About 500 years before the game begins, so roughly 3,500 years after Maya got humanity to press its own nuclear reset button, we encounter our trio of quasi-immortals for the second time. Interestingly, the Contact and Antitype are almost of secondary importance during this particular piece of history, at least when considering the overall narrative of Xenogears. They both actually played major roles during this period, however, arguably more important than their exploits overall were two other things that happened around this time. First, Maya discovered that humanity had recently begun to naturally harness ether, the game's version of magic, which she knew was drawn from / generated by the Zohar modifier. Something that they had never been able to do previously. She obviously considered this an exceptionally desirable genetic trait for humanity to cultivate, and moved to positively influence its growth however she could. Second, it was during this time period that Krelian was born, the last of our important pillar characters to come into existence. Krelian is also the only one of our majorly important parties not directly connected to either the wave existence or the Deus system. Krelian was a soldier who became involved in a love triangle between he, the Antitype, and the Contact at this period. Someone out there is probably complaining that it's not a love triangle if a third party has unrequited feelings for one or more of the others, but to that we say, point at a love triangle shown on something in recent years and tell me that one of them isn't always a third wheel.
Anyway, the important bits from this time period are as follows. The Antitype, who had become a religious leader during this era, ends up sacrificing herself in an attempt to save her friends and followers, specifically the Contact and, arguably, Krelian. In response to this, the Contact is coerced by Maya into making contact with the Zohar modifier, awakening his Contact powers. However, he was emotionally and mentally unstable in the wake of the Antitype's death, and additionally, she wasn't present, so he could not destroy the Zohar modifier. Instead, he went on a rampage and used his power to enact his vengeance upon those who slew the Antitype, the woman he loved. This too was part of Maya's plan, as his destructive rampage wiped out 96% of the human population, leaving mostly those of humanity who could wield ether as the only beings left to procreate, facilitating a species reset once more, this time with the intent of ensuring better, more magical humans to use for the repair process. Additionally, Krelian survived all of this, and using nanotechnological knowledge he'd gained up to that point, extended his life such that he was still alive and healthy by the time the main game starts some 500 years later. The Antitype's death had shaken him, and he decided that since no god came to rescue her, despite her faith in goodness, that there must be no god out there. So he would create one, and spent the next 500 years preparing to do just that, eventually joining forces with Maya in his plan to ensure Deus' regeneration, until he later discovered the existence of the wave existence and changed his plan to freeing it from its confines and transporting everyone to its higher domain, transforming everyone into waves and sparing them the unnecessarily painful existence of humanity, having decided that emotions, specifically love, were painful, unnecessary lies that no one needed to experience, and which he believed would be cleansed of any being who ascended to the wave existence's plane of existence.
Fast forward about 500 years, and we come to the third and final incarnations of the Contact and the Antitype, known in this time period as Fei Fong Wong and Ellie Van Houten, respectively. This is where the meat of the game takes place, with Fei and Ellie being your primary characters. Unfortunately for humanity, by this point, it's culling time, with Maya and Krelian having finally reached the point where they believe that humanity, with a few small modifications, is ready for their intended purpose as building blocks for Deus. Through the machinations of Maya and Krelian, Fei and Ellie are dragged into events that eventually lead to their awakening as the Contact and the Antitype, and for the first time in 10,000 years, manage to reach the Zohar modifier and awaken with its full power together. However, that had been Maya and Krelian's plan all along, as they needed Ellie to reintegrate with the Deus in order to fully awaken it. They accomplished this through, as with most things planned by Maya, manipulation, capturing Ellie and then almost killing Fei while his guard was down as he tried to rescue her, thus finally reviving Deus, while, for Maya, hopefully eliminating its greatest threat. As Krelian planned, however, Faye survived, as he needed him to destroy the Zohar modifier, and with the allies that he and Ellie had gathered, managed to destroy Deus and, resultantly, Zohar modifier, freeing the Wave of Existence from its 10,000-year imprisonment.
However, they quickly realized that the energy released in the process of the Wave Existence's return to its own realm would be more than sufficient to completely annihilate their planet. The whole thing, like the big rock. As such, Ellie, still bound to the wreck of the Deus, began maneuvering it away from the planet in hopes of ensuring everyone's survival. Fully willing to sacrifice herself to ensure everyone lived, a reoccurring trait for the anti-type. Faye, piloting the titular Xenogears, his own gear, souped up on contact and wave existence power, flew after her in order to pull her out of there and make sure that she survived along with everyone else. While inside, Faye had a final, mostly verbal, confrontation with Krelian, where the two had an abbreviated philosophical debate about the nature of man, whether life was worth it in its current state, and whether love was not only worth pursuing, but actually real in the first place. When Faye wouldn't budge, Krelian challenged him to prove the strength of his ideals in combat, summoning forth a monster to fight. Because... reasons. When it was defeated, Krelian accepted that perhaps he had been wrong, admitting that only now had he sort of begun to understand love and the qualities that most of us consider to be those best and true parts of humanity. Despite being encouraged to return back to the planet with them, though, Krelian stuck to his decision to walk with God and see the Wave Existence's higher plane, no matter what that meant for his personal future. He helped Faye and Ellie escape back into our reality, his parting words admitting that he envied the two of them, a comment we take to mean that he now had at least some understanding of the love the two shared. Something Krelian had never truly felt, before he headed off to join the Wave Existence. Afterward, the destructive energy of the dimensional shift was released safely away from the planet, and somehow Faye and Ellie were perfectly fine in the explosion, and returned home in the Xenogears to be joined by smiling and relieved friends, ready to pick up the broken fragments of their ravaged world together.
And that's basically the story of Xenogears. Origin point for 2 successive franchises, and according to much of the internet, fodder for any philosopher who wanted to take a look. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Ninjammer726, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore or let's play, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like it, hit this subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, go to the link on the left.
And for a video chosen by the gods of YouTube from our channel, hit that link on top.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.